totally realized that I had covered up the countdown. So I had no idea if it was actually working or not. But welcome back, everyone, to, you would think this live streaming thing would get easier with time, but it absolutely does not. So I think it's the struggles of having like a full-time job and not just being a creator all the time that makes this hard. Welcome back, everyone. Though this is Created Work, it is our series where we'll be exploring how startups, founders, businesses, organizations, etc., can all take advantage of Web3 as part of their growth and revenue and funding strategies over time. I'm joined by all of my amazing guests here today, but we will skip introductions except for Jane, who is our new regular joining us, and I wanted to make sure she had an opportunity to say hello and tell everybody who she is.
Hello, everyone. Super excited to be here. I'm the community lead at the .com, and I'm currently in SF, originally from LA. I'm here for the week, so super excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Good to have you, Jane. So this week's topic is, what is this week's topic? By the way, this is the third episode. I'm like just terribly bad today. Today's topic is rethinking your MVP, right? So,
and this is the third episode of how many?
It's an open-ended endeavor, but I think we've scoped out about 8 of them, 12 of them, guys, right? Yeah. But we're planning to get through the part where we mint an NFT. And then from there, it'll become interviews and talking to creators and founders of projects and other stuff like that to sort of get their insights along the way. But today's goal is to sort of talk about the MVP now, right? So in episode 1, we covered sort of just like, hey, what is Web3? Is it relevant? Does it matter? Last episode, we talked about how we would go about like sort of what you might use it for from a funding or revenue point of view. And so let's continue down this journey, like presuming that we are going to use it, right? How does this change or impact the development itself of like what we're making, right? And we've got a number of different topics, so we're going to dive right into it. And I'm going to lay out, I'm just going to list some of these, and then we could just jump around. We don't have to like necessarily go in order, but I'll popcorn out, like feel free to popcorn in after. But the idea, I think, is just that we chatted about a few different things that we think change as a result of having Web3 as part of the foundation or a part of the capability set of your actual business. Number 1 is community. And what we mean by that is establishing and building an early audience of passionate and engaged people. The second one was decentralization. So how decentralized will you be on day 1 and how will you get there? The third topic area was really wallet as identity. Right? So just like, how do you leverage wallets as a new form of identity? What number was that? Should I just go to letters now? D was memberships over SaaS mindset. So like defaulting our posture is to feel like people belong now, as opposed to like sort of that they're buying or that they're consumers or users alone, right? Another topic area we came up with was just ownership and participation. So how will you make decisions? Who will participate in the upside? And the last topic area is sort of payments. So adapting to new currencies and business models. So these are the topics we're going to talk about today. Why don't we tick it off, though, with community? Because I think we all, at least Abhinav and Arlo and I sort of seem to think that community was probably the biggest fundamental shift that happens in moving from a Web 2 mindset to a Web 3 mindset. Who wants to kick it off?
Francine, go ahead.
No, you're a community lead. You do.
I was just going to jump in, I want to. So I think, the community first mindset is probably the biggest thing, because one, with the MVP, if you're asking your community and you're talking to them every day, you're kind of getting feedback on your MVP, which kind of goes in with the lean startup methodology, right? You're getting feedback and then you're iterating over and over again. And it's the best way to know our user is going to use this and kind of get proof of concept right off the bat.
So I have been a community first person for basically all my career, and I have communities built. And one of the things that I have found is that people really aren't used to giving that feedback at the lead end when the product is being built. It's like the great thing about Web3 is that you can have community feedback and you can have a community. And I have a community, and I have a token. I have a token-based community. It's Rally, and it's Karma Coin. And I ask that community all the time, what would you like about X? How can we fine tune the product, the content, whatever? And nobody ever answers, or very seldom do people really answer.
And that's a really,
is it like that quote? What was is it Thomas Jefferson? Or no, was it Ben Franklin? It's like, we have a republic if we can keep it, kind of thing, right? Or a democracy if we can keep it.
I don't know.
Sorry.
I'm too young.
Yeah.
Even I'm too young for Ben Franklin.
But I was going to say,
yeah, please.
Yeah, I was going to say that with the feedback, something that I see that founders miss on is that they don't talk to their users every day. Maybe they send out surveys, maybe they send out questions, maybe they have a community person like myself doing all the talking, and they're really missing out getting to know who is their customer, who is their user, what does the community feel like, and that's what people are really looking for in Web3 is a community where they belong, they feel autonomous, and they own their work. And so if you're not talking to them, you don't know who they are as a person. So I think it's really important to take time to really talk to every single user and get to know them, especially in the beginning before you scale.
You can see this in the Discord channels for Web3 products. You can see who the developers are who are really responsible and responsive to the users. One thing I found in the 25 years that I've been advising startups is that you can tell people. I taught lean startup methodology for so many years, and I would say, leave the building and talk to the customer. And you would think I had told them to go jump off a bridge. They were terrified to talk to the customer. It's almost like, please, we would rather not know. And that's a recipe for disaster. And now when we absolutely can know, it's, hi, Kenny. Now that we absolutely can know, we should know. You're right. And it makes a big difference in some of these projects that I've been backing and following. You as an investor, you can tell which ones are going to succeed if the ones who have an active Discord community are the ones that are going to take off.
Such good points. And I think people misconstrue community with marketing efforts, and they're not a growth hacking or a tactic in any way. It's really, you're getting to know each person. And you talked about people being scared to ask those questions. And I think it's the mentality of you're not selling something, you're just getting to know somebody. And I think there's a little bit more psychological safety now post-pandemic because we've been just doing virtual stuff over and over again. So like getting to know people is really like at the core of community building.
Yeah, no, Jane, I completely agree with what you just said. I think that's a key point. Like, I think with a lot of, I would say, startups prior to Web3, it was more of a marketing effort, right? It's like, I've got to get a community, get folks interested so they know what I'm building. And I have to talk to them. It's like kind of an afterthought. Whereas with Web3, it's the thing that comes before you even think about the product, I think. And it becomes like that community is so strong, to your point, where people are connecting on more of a human level that I can literally, create an NFT and get access based on that. And you'll pay for that NFT to get early access to what I'm building just because you feel so strongly and you're so invested in the community and the thing that we're creating. So I completely agree. I think that's one of the big differences. It's not a marketing effort so much as it's truly about a strong community and a strong sense of connection with other like-minded people. Right?
I wish I could give you like Twitter reactions, like claps, hearts. Love that you said that.
So
Well,
let
in
me.
Discord, you could, first of all, let me preface all this by saying I hate Discord. It's like, it is like a dreadful
Megan's not here today, so you can just go ham
I can
today.
just go ahead and say it. It's just, well, think about me. I'm now an investor rather more than a creator. And so if I am going to take a look at projects, I'm going to do what Jane says I should do. I'm going to get into these communities and I'm going to hang out in them. And I'm going to see what the community thinks of what the founder is doing. And this is very fascinating, but it's also unbelievably time consuming. It's like you can be in 30 different Discord channels, as you are servers, as you are evaluating a deal or a couple of deals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get a heart attack every time I open my Discord.
Yeah.
Oh God.
I thought it was just me.
No, it's everyone.
All right. It's definitely. It seems like a common problem. Actually, Abhinav, I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Related to Francine's comment there, actually, though, is there a difference in viewing something as a user? Like, it seems like the big change is that, in the lean startup methodology, people are getting involved as like customers, right? Early evangelists, let's say, right? Like potentially as well. But there's a difference between being a user and being an owner, right? And so I guess, like, how do you see that trickling through, like, as we start to think about our features, like, because like it's one thing that we're agreeing to build a thing versus like we're building a thing based on the things you told us, right? Like, there's maybe there's a subtle difference there. Maybe it's not. I'm just curious to unpack that a little bit more.
I think it comes down to push and pull, right? So are you trying to push a product or are you trying to understand what the market wants and can create something attractive? And the current model that we're experiencing now, your shareholders, stakeholders are your customers, right? Whereas previously your stakeholders were kind of taking the lead from you, or maybe they were telling you, I think this, X, Y, Z. Now the people who are your shareholders or your stakeholders, they're straight up telling you, if you build this, I'll use it, right? So that feedback loop and iterative loop is much shorter and smaller. So I think that's really what's changed, is the people that are your customers are your direct shareholders and stakeholders. So I think that for me is the key.
Yeah, I guess the question is, though, do shareholders make good decisions relative to versus customers, right? Like, because there's sometimes a tension, right? Like, where as a shareholder, I'm optimizing for my local value, right? Like, versus like, am I making something for the betterment of like others, right? Or like the users of the thing. And so this is part of like why boards and often operate in sort of this arm's length kind of way, right? Like, as opposed to sort of so commingled. So I do feel like there's some new challenges that I don't think we know how to deal with them yet, per se, right? Like, we're still sorting through them.
I think that's why the
challenge.
I was going to say, I think that's why the progressive decentralization idea is, I think, rings
Let's
true.
talk about that then, yeah.
Right, because I think it's that kind of having a bit more centralized control, so there can be a bit more direction. You're not just letting the first people through the door going, okay, we're just going to do this, and they just decide, and then it's like, okay, we'll close the door, right? So you don't want that. So it's building a methodology that's going to allow the community now to have an input, for you to listen, but for them not to be unilaterally making decisions that then excludes further community from coming in.
Well, and in the best communities, or what I have experienced as the best communities, the members of the community at some point ask for a product roadmap. And this is a very interesting two-way dialogue that's going on now that didn't used to go on. Like, investors always ask for a product roadmap, but users didn't even most of the time know what a product roadmap is. And so I'm having trouble, to be really honest, distinguishing between what is misaligned still in the objectives of investors and users, and what is now better aligned. because let's use an example. I'm not a gamer, and like 50% of these projects are making tools for gamers to use in one way or another. And I know that I want to optimize for value, but I don't necessarily want to optimize for what makes a great game. The users want to optimize for what makes a great game. And they should be able to drag me along with the product roadmap. You know what I mean? So this is complicated.
Well, the flip side too, right? They've often said the wisdom of the crowd is not that smart necessarily either, right? Like Steve Jobs famously said, "Don't listen to your users," right? Like, now that's not quite exactly what he meant, but at the heart of it was just that, I've always said this, that like when it comes to being an innovator, the problem with asking users for the solutions is they're confined to the toolkit that they have, right? And so hence they don't necessarily think to imagine outside of the set of tools that they know. Hence, our job is to say, how do we make new tools accessible and viable solutions to problems that maybe you can't see yet?
I think it was Henry Ford that said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have told me faster horses, right?
You knew
So,
Henry
but
Ford?
I think,
Awesome, Arnold. I didn't know you were that old.
my network is wide, Greg. It's pretty wide.
That's all I ever wanted.
And
now suddenly I've got NFTs.
to take it a step
He wants a
further.
faster NFT now.
Right, I want faster NFTs.
Take it a step further, I think users are asking for product roadmaps because now they're like, well, why should I invest my time in you? Now time has become this precious commodity, and they're asking, well, what are you building? Should I invest my precious time into your company?
Yeah, absolutely. One, I think this commingling now, right? Like you are asking for a roadmap because you become an investor, not just a participant or a user. And I think the folks who did this well historically did have that framework or mindset with their early customers to begin with, right? But Abhinav raised the second topic area that we sort of talked about. And I think this is a good one to go into. Abhinav, do you want to introduce a little bit more of the thoughts from around like progressive decentralization and what it may mean for your product?
Yeah. So just high level, it's kind of, it's really, really relevant for someone who started with a Web 2 company and is switching to Web 3. If you're building a token and that's the first product, then you really need to think differently. But I think the idea is if you're building a product that you want to serve, perhaps use it as a DApp, or you want it to be serving a decentralized purpose, then you need to have a roadmap that allows you to have enough centralized control so you can build something, you can incubate something, you can get it to a stage where then you can say, okay, now let everybody tear it up, now put input so that it can be a bit more formed. Then it comes in terms of sharing ownership, sharing, taking people along the way, having more community involvement. And then the kind of final stage of that is actually being fully on chain, being fully decentralized, so it's mechanically decentralized. So, I mean, the way that we've been thinking about that in terms of our startup is kind of thinking you've got your traditional Web 2 platforms, then you've got the next level of where you're looking at compatibility, so NFT gating, token gating. So how do I interact with the new world? The next is, okay, how do I bring the community on? So can I have a token and share the ownership? And then the final is like, what do I need to do so that it's mechanically decentralized? So that's kind of how we think about this.
Great. And by the way, I think it's important to remember this is not meant to be prescriptive. So I don't think folks should assume you have to go from one end of the spectrum to the other end, right? Like you should use the parts that are relevant. I see Francine, you unmuted. Do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I actually love what you just said, Abhinav. I think that's really the right way to go, because that allows you to develop a product that's in line with a vision that you may have had because you know some stuff that users don't know. And once the users get involved, then, passing it over to them so that it becomes progressively more decentralized is probably the right thing to do. And also we really, in reality, don't we have to wait until the law around DAOs I know I'm throwing a term in here, but if we're going to decentralize, we're going to end up probably with a DAO. And just listening to people try to give advice about DAOs and governance and tax issues and so on, I would say if I were giving advice to a founder today, which I am, but it's just not any of you, I would say, start slowly and sort of get further in, wade in, don't jump in, because we don't know, there's a lot of rocks out there in that lake. So if you jump in, you just don't know what you're going to hit. And in a year, well, the market moves very quickly, but in 6 months people may know more than they do now. And I think another thing that's really important as you're developing a product is that nobody knows. It's not like you can consult an expert or you can hire an expert. No, everyone's learning together. It's WAGMI, which is the great part about it.
Francine dropping some alpha this morning. No, I so agree. And to piggyback off of that, it's like with this Web3 world, I already lost my train of thought. So I was just thinking about that you dropped some alpha. So embarrassing. What was I going to say?
I don't know. Take off your beanie and maybe it'll come out.
Oh,
maybe it's just trapped, Jamie.
I don't know. I got distracted. Come back to me. Sorry.
Holy smokes. This is crazy. Sorry. I just found a new feature in StreamYard.
Oh, I remembered.
There we go.
Right.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, to piggyback off of that, a lot of people are becoming a DAO just to become one. And I think it's important to kind of like go into that slowly, pick things that are working in the DAO community, and you can integrate them into your business. You don't need to tokenize and decentralize everything right up front. If it organically becomes that, that's great. But yeah. I think where companies fail is they like the word DAO and they become it, and there's no purpose or reason behind it, and the community gets misaligned with that purpose.
I will say this. I do think, and this is another distinction I think that folks often miss, is there's sort of a technological change and a cultural change sort of embodied in Web3, right? The technological part is probably the easier part to leverage, right? Like, and it's fundamentally about persistence and about payments, right? Like that's like the technology of Web3 is in those two domains, right? And so you can innovate and experiment with new ways to do persistence and new ways to do payments, right? That's great. It's awesome. The harder part is the cultural part, right? Because it also embodies like some of the other things that we wanted to get through this week, is a transition to, for example, like a different mindset around community, around ownership, around governance, right? These things are very, very difficult to sort of add on to your business, right? Like, but there's experiments you can do. So let's talk a little bit about some of the technology, right? This idea of persistence and of payments, right? And how they may impact your business. So we had two topics here. One was just sort of like the wallets sort of as identity, right? Like, and I think that this is one part of the ecosystem and the technological part. And then we had payments, right? So who wants to jump us off into sort of like a thought about like maybe ways that founders thinking today, right? Because when we jumped on the DAO thing, that was in the cultural part, right? Like, I think that's just the hardest part to get right? Forget the legal parts even. Just like, how the hell do you even use this thing in your business is a new construct for a lot of people. But what about the new parts of technology? Arnold, you're our resident technologist. What do you think? What are you thinking in this regard?
Yeah, no. So I mean, it opens up a lot of interesting possibilities, right? I know we've talked about several of them where, previously we had like traditional forms only of things like Stripe and, credit card payments only. And so now this idea, and this is certainly something we've been looking at, right? Using like Web3 to provide additional experiences around, not only with regards to identity, but also with regards to payment as well. So, you buy an NFT and you get exclusive access to this community, or you buy this NFT and you get early access to this space or special access to different features, that maybe other people don't get access to, or you just get, early access to them. So it's certainly opened up a lot of new and interesting spaces. And I think kind of to the previous points, we've been making, it's just that question of how do you balance it, right? Or do you kind of come right in the middle? Like, do you rip out Stripe completely and look to just, support tokens for access to your community? Or do you try to find some middle ground, some hybrid approach where you can support both, I suppose, Web 2 and Web 3 payment mechanisms? And depends on the technology you're building, the community you're serving, certainly. But I don't know, I think that's certainly how I'm just kind of thinking about it, like at this point in time.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Francine.
No, you go. I can always talk.
Well, so can I. So that's why we're good mates here. I guess what I would say is, I think, like, to add a little bit more sort of downstream from where your comment, Arnold, is just that I think, like, so from a payments point of view, I think the constraints or considerations really boil down to new levels of money, right? Like, so for example, you can only work in cents in the dollar part, right? Like, but if you're working in crypto, you have like 18 decimal places that are available for you to slice and dice into the ecosystem, which means that formerly, where say like microtransactions were not viable because they were too expensive to operate. Well, gas can also make microtransactions equally or even worse to operate. But, assuming you get into like a low gas or no gas environment, you can actually do transactions at a tiny, tiny, tiny fractionalized level that wasn't possible before. And I think that then fosters more of this ownership and more of this sort of involvement on one level, right? I also think there's fluidity now in currencies, right? Like, so, whereas before you might have tend to be like USD centric, right? Like, or maybe you did USD and EU, right? If you were like a global company, right? Now there's currencies that are emergent in all parts of the world, right? Like a game currency may be valuable to your community of users or other things like that. So there's all of this sort of DEX style stuff is really interesting, like as a new opportunity potentially to explore, like moving money from different communities or understanding currency that's happening out there. The second part, just to close up on the persistence side, I think is also now is rethinking what the persistence means. And I think it means two things, right? It means obviously the immutability, like stuff can't change, right? So it means that it lives forever, for better or worse, right? Like, and so it adds, I think, some consideration about what do I want to put out there, right? Like, because like, you can't change it. It also adds new concerns, I think, for folks about regulations and about security, like be careful what they put into those places. But it adds one new opportunity, I think, as well, which is composability, right? Because all of this stuff is out there and anyone can see it. You can suddenly start to innovate in new ways on top of the data that other people are exhausting into the world without any needs for permissions or OAuth or other kinds of access controls that, formerly you had to go through a gatekeeper to like tell you, no, you can't see my context because we make money from that context list. So hence you're not allowed to see it or whatever it may be.
I wonder what's coming down the road with regard to data privacy and, with these technologies. I mean, I'm an optimistic person, and yes, I am head over heels into this Web3, but I can't believe, well, the only thing that I've really come up against right now is what every early adopter comes up against, which is the fact that there are not a whole hell of a lot of people willing to follow you in the very beginning, and even the tokenized community that I have, I feel bad because I feel like I could have grown it faster if I could have used multiple payment strategies on it. And I've been trying to just use the tokens, and that I think has held the community back, because you never find out how few early adopters there are until you put something very new out there and ask even people who really trust you and love you to participate.
Yeah, actually, Jane, I'm curious. I know you're launching. Jane has some amazing art if you haven't seen it yet. If you send the link here, I'll throw it up into the feed as well. But can you speak to that a little bit as well? Because I know you're creating like a new community around some of your art as well. Like, how are those challenges showing up for you?
Yeah, so one of the projects that I'm working on is called Crypto Skugs, and it's a visual and audio NFT that I'm working on with my musician friend, Gloria Kim. And she's pretty popular. She posted on her Instagram, if I made an NFT, who would buy it? And everyone said, that sounds great, but I don't know what the heck that is. And we realized that the onboarding process and the barrier to entry is so high for the average music listener. And so what we're finding is people just want to know how to do something. And I don't think it's necessary for them to know the how, but the why. So if they really appreciate music, they can be in the community. And I think the Web3 kind of vibe sometimes is struggle and figure it out on how to connect your wallet and, how to hook up all the finances and where to buy and things like that. But, is there a world where we can just give step-by-step ABC, like tutorials, looms, all the things, like this is how you do it, this is how you buy it, and then after you decide what you want to do in terms of the community? And I think the answer is yes. I think that there is a place where that's going to be a lot more of the norm, and I think companies specifically are building technologies to make that barrier to entry a lot lower.
So I'm a writer, Jane, and I have, the same problem with making NFTs of my writing that I'm sure your musician friends of their music. First of all, there's the technology piece. How do you format it? And then there's how do you price it? I mean, it is very different. Oh, thank you. I'm going to look at your collection, but these things all have to happen slowly, and we're all in here at the very beginning. And I remember this as like the very beginning of Twitter and Facebook, where nobody knew why you used anything or how to use anything, and people used to say to me, I don't want to be on Twitter. Well, who would I want to know what I had for lunch? And it's emerged. It's emerged into this unbelievable news source that, is almost a utility now. But when you really think about Twitter, I've been on it since 2006. So this is 15 years.
Yeah, that's the skepticism that people have around Web3, is all the holes that it has. But what they don't realize or maybe think about is it's so early, and people are developing, like I said, these technologies around Web3 to support people. And yeah, there are things that aren't working right now. That's kind of where the iteration process is coming in to fix those things and make it better. I don't think it's a perfect process right now, but there's a lot of things from Web3 that we can use in our businesses that are working.
Yeah. Abhinav, how about you? Any thoughts on the technology layer here?
Yeah, I think for me, the wallets is the really interesting piece. It's still quite new, right? There's not that many wallets out there that are kind of established. And, you see, there was a graphic somewhere I saw, which is, Web 1 was email and password login. Web 2 was Facebook login, and Web 3 is kind of wallet connect. And I think that's an interesting dynamic of like, if that's going to be the gateway to a lot of different things, then, what is the wallet going to mean, right? Is the wallet going to be the Facebook of the future, or not, of that sort of main gateway? So I think that for me is fascinating. And I think you look at Phantom, which started off as the Solana wallet, and their iOS beta now, you can see that they're building in functionality into the actual wallet. So you can see where that's going, right? The kind of, once you build the gateway, then you can build a whole bunch of stuff around it. So that's really interesting. I think the advertising side of things, so what Francine said around, previously people were worried about having the data mined, right? Or having kind of that compromised and then used against them, or kind of, not being in control of it. This world is kind of like, hey, my data's there, just go look at it. It's all open. Okay, well, so how does that work? What protection is there around it? Or is it just everyone's going to have to learn to operate in a way that is, I know that whatever I'm touching or doing is going to be visible, and I'm okay with that, or I'm at least going to try and change my behavior to match that.
I do find it interesting because they complain that other people were making money, and seems like now more people will be able to make money off of your data than before.
And I want to go back, Abhinav, to the wallet question. And I want to give you a concrete example. A long time ago in NFT terms, which means maybe
Last week.
6 months, I supported a woman-led, and I have to lead off with women-led project called the Dick Club. And if you supported this project, you got access to some dicks. Well, what a surprise that I would want some of those. So I did it, and I got 10 dicks, and I put them in a Solana wallet. What I didn't really know at the time was that it was a Solana wallet, because until then I had just been dealing with Ethereum. So when I went to look, I know this is so funny, but I mean, it's unseemly, but we're going on. I'm going to barrel on.
The whole expression about
my dicks yesterday.
as useless as a bag of dicks without a handle is coming to mind.
Yes, exactly. I couldn't find my dicks. And so I began retracing my steps. And I found, I realized that they were in my Solana wallet. And then I had to join the wallet Soulflare. I use Soulflare, the Soulflare wallet Discord, yet another Discord, so that I could ask, how do I see these in my Solana wallet? And it literally took me all afternoon to find my dicks. And so I would say to you, from that experience, I sorted it out. I learned a lot. I'm a happy girl now, but how many users are going to do that right now?
I love
the wallet experience. The wallet experience has to be made much, much.
I see Francine joining the Discord, and the first comment is, "Anyone seen my dicks?"
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was thinking.
I can't see my dicks. Exactly.
It's like, what in Web 2 you would never say that, but now it's like, where are my dicks?
Exactly.
Where can I find some dicks? And I'm sure other people.
I was trying to log in with my dick, and I can't find
it. Exactly.
Right. Exactly. This is the part I love about Web3. The part I love about Web3 is the fun. It was Web2 was really serious.
Yes.
And Web3 is joyous. It's going to come to a point where it won't be so joyous.
Yeah.
But right now, it is really joyous. And the fact that, and I just blew my top at an Apple support guy because he wasted a half hour of my time not giving me a solution to my AirPods problem. And yet I spent 5 hours yesterday looking for my dicks. And at the end of the day, I had this profound sense of satisfaction. I wasn't impatient. I wasn't angry. It's so different.
Yeah, I think a great word to say, it's very playful and lighthearted, and Web2 is very stuffy. And I think we've been stuffed for like a year with this pandemic stuff. We want to have fun at home and find a way to connect with others. And that's through humor.
Just going totally wrong. Everyone wants to be at home being stuffed with dicks.
Why not? What's wrong with that?
Well, actually, so just to bring it back to, by the way, you're absolutely right. This is a lot more fun.
Am I going to get written out of this show after today?
Art, like, why would we want less of that? We did say, Albin Avid asked this question yesterday when we were talking about why community now, right? And the question he posed was, what's changed to make it easier to sort of do or be part of community? Actually, we came up with this list, and I'm curious to get, especially Jane and Francine's feedback on it. We put down, people are more connected than ever before. We said there's more ways to connect, audio, purchases, etc. There's financial incentives involved, fun, was one of them. Exclusivity, VIP clout, the social isolation, and the gaming mechanics were all things that we thought were like these convergent forces that are making community so viable now as a strategy. I'm curious your thoughts as well.
I wouldn't discount COVID as still a factor in all of this, because I remember, as I'm sure we all do, when Clubhouse first launched and everybody went to sleep on Clubhouse and woke up on Clubhouse because we were all trapped in our houses. And I think that Web3, while not the same, I mean, there's a lot more to it than just Clubhouse, but I think that part of Web3 is that our generation, or our epoch, and all the generations alive during this epoch, have been tainted or tarnished or stifled or something by COVID, and that the need for community, it is so high. I mean, it's like the mental health crisis, only this is like a healthy way to, build a business out of solving the mental health crisis, which is loneliness. There's a huge loneliness crisis.
Yeah, I wrote an article about this during the pandemic, which was finding the humanity in humanity. And what that really meant was exactly what Francine said, is that people were looking to connect with others because they felt so isolated. And I think that really sped up this Web3 community first ethos because of that. And had the pandemic not happened, I think maybe naturally it would have happened at a slower rate. But now, like, people had to figure out how to be digitally connected. There was no choice. So I think that's really what led to all of this.
Well, I think the interesting thing there is just that maybe a point we kind of missed is just that community features also maybe are an important vector for like founders and startup folks to be thinking about, right? Like actually, Arnold, Abhinav, and I are all building community platforms in one shape or another. Would that be the case had it not been for sort of the times we find ourselves in, where these sort of pieces seem the most valuable as well for like entrepreneurs trying to figure out ways to create opportunity?
And, I'm a huge Shark Tank fan, huge. And, something that they were saying that I really related to was like some of these businesses, went up in skyrocket sales during the pandemic, but is that really maintainable after people are starting to go out in the world? And so I think when creating a business, it's important to think about that. Is your product going to last post-pandemic culture? Hopefully it's not 5 years from now, but let's just say, 5-10 years from now, is it a sustainable model?
Yeah. Abhinav, I saw you on mute.
No, I was just saying, I think there was kind of a critical mass with, I think it was Discord, maybe Slack as well to some degree. Like, nobody really used to post links to WhatsApp groups and be like, come join my WhatsApp on their Instagram profile, right? And there was a change a few years back, and it was just like, oh, this is the norm. So I've got a kind of a semi-public private place, and I'm openly sharing the link. And so that for me was like an unusual characteristic that I only saw in the last couple of years. And I was trying to think, were there WhatsApp groups that people were trying to do the same thing with before? And had I just not noticed it?
Well, yes and no. Everything has increased, because I'm noticing that everyone I know now has a Telegram group. So there's a lot of different spaces like that where people are forming affinity groups. We're all forming affinity groups. And this is very interesting to me from my Web 2 perspective, because we've taken those groups off of Facebook. Where people are taking their groups off of Facebook and putting them in all these other places. And, I wouldn't ascribe too much to that, years of Facebook abuse. I would rather say it's part of a progression to new tools, which lead to, new traits. And Jane, I have to tell you, in the interstices between talking myself, I've been looking at your OpenSea collections, and I have to tell you, you are such a talented woman.
You're awesome, right? It's
They're
really
amazing.
cool. Yeah.
They are
Thank
amazing.
you.
And I notice you have named yourself Jane Dow. I love it.
Thank you.
I just like the whole thing. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Yeah, it's a little play on Jane Doe.
Yes, I know.
Who is she?
I was looking at one. I was trying to think about if I want to liquidate one of my crypto coven soon, because I really like the polka dot purple one. But yeah. I think there's I think to the point though that we're making, I think is also important to remember is that community is not a one size fits all solution. And I think this idea of the telegrams and these other things is just more about I finally started reading this damn book. And
oh no,
he
the
talks
blue
about
book.
yeah, the atomic networks though. And I think the idea that there are going to be stacking or sort of combinations of people that need more time or need more connection or desire more connection. And I think perhaps where Discord most disservices us is it does create this massive plaza where everyone is in, and it's hard to develop any stronger ties or any intimacy or any kind of other thing, inside of it, largely because of freaking noise, right? Even if I was trying to talk to somebody, I'm being bombarded by 900 other things the second I go in there, and it makes it really distracting and really difficult to further, I think, stronger relationships, which I think is ultimately critical for communities to last.
Do you know what Discord reminds me of now in the way that I approach it and feel about it? It's like email, where you get up in the morning and you have this horrible feeling of trepidation before you confront your inbox for the first time. I feel that about Discord in all these communities. I slog through them once a day. I have a time during the day that I've sort of time managed into my, all right, let's see what's happening in hedgies and crypto punks and crypto dads and, all of this stuff. And it's not pleasurable. Well, once in a while it is. The cool thing is once in a while you get something that's like gold in a community and you're like, oh, I could really get down with this.
No, it's funny, Francine. I'm kind of in the same boat where I'm a member of all these communities now, and I don't actually ever go into them anymore. I just get the push notifications and I just swipe them away. And I stop sometimes and go, why am I not just turning this off? It's just normal now.
It's just tax now though, right? It's tax.
Yeah.
Yes. It's cognitive load.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I don't know how that's going to work out for the founders who are using these as their the Web3 founders who are using these as their major form of communication.
It's interesting because we've slightly pivoted here at Zealous. Part of it is a reaction to some of this stuff. And I know from having combos with Arnold and Abhinav that it's impacting us in the way we think about things, a lot because yeah, I think this seems to be a push-pull problem, I think, that happens historically. And I feel like this is like a classic technological problem where technology is applied as a means to make us closer. And what it causes is more distance, right? Actually, right? The internet made the world smaller, but then it suddenly made you isolated. And so we go through these push and pulls, where there'll be this is what nostalgia is at heart, right? It's longing for the way, the feeling of before, right? And we get nostalgic even in technology, right? We use Discord and they're like, shit, is there a way I can just talk to a few people again, right? And then you go back to a little Telegram or an SMS group and you're just talking to 5 people that you like the most out of the thing. That's Arnold and Abhinav. How did we start this show? We're in a group with a whole bunch of people, or we were in several groups with lots of people, and then we found each other. We like talking to each other the most. We now talk to each other kind of solo and siloed from the others, not because we don't like the other people, but because it was too much noise and there was too low of a signal in what we were getting from sort of being in the other thing.
Anytime anything grows, the signal to noise ratio grows with it. the noise to signal, whatever it is, the thing that makes it noise rather than signal grows. And then sooner or later, it becomes much less useful.
Yeah.
And I worry, I worry for the creator economy, because it's so reliant on Discord right now. And when you really come down to it, Discord was started, I don't know, 10 years ago as a way for Twitch streamers to communicate with their audiences. And now it's like, it's way outgrown that.
Yeah.
And it's being used for things that it wasn't intended for. I guess that's the end of that statement.
I would definitely argue it's buckling under its own success, right? And I don't know they have an easy way out of the paradigm that they're in.
Some of it's down to community design too, right? If the optimal number is 150 people that can maximum know each other and kind of really relate in the ballpark, right? And if you just have rooms of 10,000 people, like it's not like unless you can structure in a way that there are only 150 people in a place that can talk and kind of, okay, I now recognize who I'm talking to. I can kind of develop this conversation further. If I have to have 10,000 people jumping in, that's not a conversation. That's just people throwing rocks in the lake, right?
Yeah, but then when you're in a Discord, the 10,000 people are all saying, "How do I get on the white list?"
I will say, in the NFT world, I definitely make a strong distinction between pre-mint and post-mint Discord, because I feel like completely different. Like when you're trying to just pump up the market versus like when you're actually trying to like put that stuff to use, right?
Exactly.
By the way,
It's like
this conversation. Oh, sorry, Jane. Go ahead before we wrap up.
No, I was just gonna say with Discord, it's kind of like a concert. There's 10,000 people. You can feel the energy, and it's super exciting. But if everyone's yelling, you're gonna be like, well, "WTF? What are you gonna?" I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss. So, but in a concert where there's 50, 20 people, and you're getting to know people, it feels a lot more intimate. You feel a lot more calm and like included in whatever the artist is trying to like share with you. So I think there's like two distinctions.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see what happens.
I like that metaphor. Concert metaphor is a good one, for sure. Well, everyone, I want to say thank you. This has been actually a great conversation. I think if you're a founder out there listening, I certainly hope that you will take the opportunity to sort of like consider how some of these things may be able to impact like some of the decisions you make about your product, or maybe where you ideate where to go. Just to wrap up a little bit, by the way, this week we do have our AMA drop. If you haven't caught it already, feel free to check out our Twitter. You can get it. They have a new thing built into StreamYard. I can change the slides right here. I don't actually have to have two tabs open anymore. But yeah, we are live 3 times a week. We will be back tomorrow with our interview series. I think we have Tony from Diffusion Me. And then on Friday, we have the news. I will be out this Friday and also next week because Techstars is starting and I will be out of pocket. So we will
that is so exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. So we are off for this show next week, but you can give us a follow to find out about future episodes over We're Create Economy Everywhere. You can join our Slack because it's the smaller version of the Discord, right? Over here. And yeah, next week we will be back. I need to update our art because we have so many great new co-hosts with us, but we are going to be back on February 1st for episode 4. And what we will be doing then is actually talking about, so come armed, folks, I'm warning you now, with ways to put these ideas to use, right? So we'll be talking a little bit more lower level in terms of, I'd love to have examples of like how you've seen gating working in interesting ways, right? Or ways that we could apply some of these concepts and implement them as technology or features into the apps that we are building. So looking forward to having that conversation with all of you. This has been awesome. Thanks everybody for being here again. And we will see you in 2 weeks from today. Bye everyone.
Bye. Bye.